Okay, the topic for today that I want to talk about is the illusion of an objective reality. But to do so, I want to give a little bit of background information about myself. I've always had a very difficult time describing to people, what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling. And I do a lot of artwork. I'm an abstract artist, so sometimes people will ask me, well, can you describe, your artwork, in words? And it's really hard for me to do so because the whole purpose of doing the art is that I'm trying to express emotions that I'm feeling that I cannot find the words to describe. Therefore, I use art as a language to express those emotions. I want to show you two examples of two pieces that I did within hours of each other while I was feeling the same emotion. But one is a little bit more, right brain. The other one's a little bit more left brain. I feel like I often struggle because both sides of my brain try to take over, and it's always a constant struggle because some people have one side stronger than the other. I kind of have both. My abstract and my logic are always extremely high functioning, and it's hard to find that mellow place where I can just bring them to agree with what they're feeling. So here's the first one. This one I wrote: the most difficult aspect of having a mind that works quicker than most is that the mind often likes to take the body hostage, as it runs so many programs in the background of the subconscious. It has found a way to exploit the body without taking into consideration any of its physical needs. It uses the body for the sole purpose of indulging in its pleasure. And this can be true. This is where, it gets a little complicated with how we perceive reality. Here's the other one. And see, it's the same colors because it's the same emotion that I was feeling at the time. It's just one side of my brain has one way of explaining it, the other side of my brain has a different way of explaining it. And for this one I wrote, emotions are the most powerful drugs that alter consciousness. An emotion can make you reach the highest levels of heaven, or bring you down to the deepest and most obscure regions of hell. Once you remove the filter of emotion from your eyes, then and only then can you see through the illusion of reality. And then this brings me back to the topic that I wanted to talk about. What is an objective reality? Is it something that is real? Or is it a mere illusion? And a lot of us would like to believe we can define what an objective reality is, which is the whole purpose of science. But even then, there are flaws to trying to define it. The problem with reality is that we see it through the filter of whatever emotion we're feeling at the time. Our emotions are like different colored glasses. So it's like changing the lenses in your glasses and putting different colors. Each emotion, you're going to see the world slightly different depending on what emotion you're feeling. But let's try to see things a little bit more objectively without the emotion. So let's say we can remove all the emotion from our mind and just use our vision, our eyes, which is our sight, to see a more objective reality. Our vision works in, I'm going to try to simplify everything a little bit so that I don't talk too much, but It's kind of like on your camera where you can zoom in and zoom out. You can use your vision to look at a little tiny fruit fly that's flying in front of your eyes and follow it. And while you're doing that, it's like your vision is zoomed in, like a microscope kind of. And then everything around goes kind of blurry because your focus is mainly on that specific object directly in front of your eyes. And then it also works like a telescope. You can look at the clouds way out there, moving and swirling around, doing their thing. When you're doing that, it's kind of like having telescopic vision, like a telescope. Like you're zooming out and you can see way, like a lot of detail way out there. But then everything close by, like the fruit fly that might be flying in front of your vision, you might not focus on it or even notice it while you're focusing on that which is very far away. This creates a problem with perceiving that objective reality because if you notice, there can be many things happening all at once. And as human beings, sometimes it's hard for us to process all that information. It's trying to use your eyes to focus on whatever your mind wants to see. So in essence, you're creating your own reality at that point. You know, you're creating whatever reality you want to see or what you want to focus on. And now to complicate things even more is, let's say we were like computers or like robots and we could zoom in and zoom out all at the same time and observe all of reality. Like, you know, that's a very objective reality. Like you can see what's happening way out in space and you can see what's happening right in front of your eyes to the microscopic level. And like, let's say you could handle analyzing all that information and seeing that reality for what it is. Now here's the problem. We only see a small percentage of the electromagnetic spectrum. That's the reality. No matter how far you can zoom in or zoom out with your vision, there's still so much we can't see. You know, from like very low frequency waves to very high frequency electromagnetic waves, you know, from an infrared, past the infrared spectrum, down past the ultraviolet spectrum, you know, like we only see 5% of what's actually occurring. That's our objective reality, what we see with our eyes. But it's funny because even if we try to understand, you know, like a very objective reality, let's say we could see all the wavelengths of light. We could see far away and very up close all at the same time and analyze the whole world as it's happening. There's more to reality than that. There is the human aspect, the emotional, the free will aspect of other humans, how their minds work, and trying to gauge what they're planning to do next. It's hard to forecast, you know, sometimes, you know, what's the next move in the universe because everyone has the ability for free will and stuff. And I know this is getting a little bit far off topic. Not really. It's just I'm going more into a deeper level of understanding of reality. I once dated this guy, Brian, that was deaf. And he could read me better than anyone has ever been able to read me, ever. And I never understood how he always knew what my next move was. He was born completely deaf from birth, never experienced sound. Therefore, his focus was with his other senses, and I believe he could see body language that most of us are not used to seeing in detail, mainly because he had to. That's the only, like, a lot of the times we can tell a person's intention by the tone of their voice. We can read people, simply by the intonation of their voice and, the eye contact they make with you. But when you're not used to hearing, you must see the world through a different lens. And with him, I believe he could just perceive the very minimal body movements that most of us would fail to notice on an average day. And then this is where, like, all your other senses come in, and then each sense adds a level of complexity to your world. When you're using all 5 of your senses and they're extremely heightened, you perceive the world a lot different than everyone else. And that's where reality starts to get confusing, because then you can't describe a very objective reality if all of your senses are heightened and you can see through different levels of consciousness that most people are used to seeing or being able to see. For me, I've always had an extremely high IQ, which for many years I've considered it a curse from the universe, because being more intelligent than the majority of everyone around you can be difficult to deal with when you have no way to simplify what you're thinking or feeling to explain it to most people. I find that many people cannot keep up with me mentally. And it's actually quite a lonely feeling. Like, many people think of it as a gift, but it's actually a very lonely world when your best friend is you, because it's easier to sit in front of a mirror and have deep philosophical conversations about existence and just sit there for hours, talking about such complex topics that you cannot talk to most of the world about, because for the most part they'll label you as insane and put you on antipsychotic medication. For me, it's been a journey, and I am trying to see reality as objectively as I can, but the more I do so, the more I can see. Which brings me into very high spiritual realms where I'm starting to see things that most people cannot ever imagine seeing. But I also need to understand that the majority of the world will not see those things. So it's kind of like that paradox where it's like, is it a blessing or is it a curse? When you transcend into very high levels of the metaphysical world, your objective reality is so different than the objective reality of people that are used to only using one sense to analyze the world. When you use all of your senses, you see a world much different than most people ever can imagine seeing. There's a beauty in this, Sometimes the loneliness tries to take over and you feel very isolated from the world. But at the same time, it gives you that time to work on yourself and create things, you know, that you've always wanted to create, you know. I've been working on making jewelry. I've been working on doing all sorts of different things with art. A lot of like my face art, you know, like depending on the day, you know, the emotion that I'm feeling, the colors that I'm getting from the universe's energy, that's what I focus on doing. And I must say, I've been getting a lot of good things coming towards me. I've been able to start living life again. Many people wait till it's too late or till they're old to like start appreciating living in the present moment, and when you fully immerse yourself in the present moment, you can sit back and just watch the whole world in amazement and see how wonderful it is just to exist, just using your senses to observe reality, what an objective reality, without being clouded by emotions, without pain, without fear, without being restrained. Because I feel like emotions, like I said before, can act like as a drug, or they can imprison you as well. And it's like learning to detach yourself from those emotions and just really try to see reality as objectively as you can possibly see it from your own personal standpoint. There is no such thing as an objective reality, and that's where I wanted to get to. That's why I started out with, you know, the illusion of an objective reality. We all believe that we understand reality. No one really does. I'm a philosopher as well, and I find my own moral beliefs to constantly be changing and evolving. And it's not a point that I'm ever going to reach where I'm like, this is who I am. It's, I become a different person with time, you know. Everyone goes on a journey to find themselves. Once you find yourself, you realize that you don't know who you are, because you will be a different person every day that goes by, because the more information you acquire from the world, the more you immerse yourself in the world, the more you will continue to grow spiritually, and you'll never be back to who you used to be. So finding yourself is just such a crazy concept. Like, you can't find yourself. Like, you have to just be yourself. You have to just, it comes from inside of you. You just have to be you, you know, and just follow what feels good. That's the best way I can describe it, because if I try to use my words, I think I'm going to confuse everyone. But like, if you feel that happy vibration on the inside that's tingly and it feels good, like when you do good things for people and they smile at you or you make people laugh, that's what you need to follow. And I noticed that it's almost 20 minutes into me talking, so I hope everyone got something out of this, whoever was able to watch the full time that I was speaking. And I love everyone. I will try to make shorter videos on smaller topics, but this was like a really big topic because it basically revolves around everything that I am and that I believe and that I feel. And I feel everything so deeply that it's hard to ever describe fully to anyone with words what I feel or what I see with my eyes. I think most people would go completely insane if they could just jump into my head for 2 seconds. Like, they would just explode and die, and it'd be too much to handle. But I hope everyone is very blessed. I hope everyone can find what really makes them happy and what makes their soul vibrate at the highest frequency and is able to transcend into a higher realm of consciousness.